Okay, bow hunters, welcome back. I said that I would never do this after the last trip of doing a car podcast, but we're only running two mics this time, so I'm hoping we can make the audio a little bit better. And to be honest, we just didn't have the time in camp at all. I literally thought about it when we were laying in bed last night at 10 o'clock. I was like, oh, it's either hop up and do a podcast now and be absolutely battling today for our 4 o'clock wake up, or just do another one in the car and give it another shot and see if it actually works. We're doing a little bit of a different system to how we're holding it. So hopefully it sounds all right for you. But joined by Mr. Grant Muir. Is it Muir?
Yeah, Muir, yeah.
Yeah, Grant Muir. So Grant, we went out for our very first hunt this weekend, which is, your very first hunt, which is, I think, always super exciting. I'm always so keen to take someone out and just see what their experience is like in seeing animals up close and personal, getting to actually hunt and harvest, getting to do that whole process. And I was very confident we were going to be able to walk away with animals this weekend, because you were shooting so well before we went. Like, you were reporting back to me, oh yeah, and I'm doing the coat can at 50 meters and 60 meters and stuff, which is kind of like the stuff that you get to do regularly. And the fact that this place has so many goats where we're going, I'm like, I'm sure we can get away with the deal. And then in the week in the lead up to it, you're like, man, my bow limbs just cracked, and it was just a big series of events that kind of happened. So take us through what actually played out in your lead up to this hunt.
Yeah, well, I've shot a bow for a couple of years. Like, I had a PSE Stinger years and years and years ago, and then I bought a PSE with a Bow Madness Unleashed. It was like a 60-pound setup, and I'd been doing a bit of 3D shooting, and I've got a range at home that I'd mucked around just socially to zen out, and I'd really loved that bow. I'd had it for 3 years. It had never let me down. And it was like the week before we head out, I thought, I'll go up the shop and I'll get it looked at. We'll turn it up to 70 pound. I'll change from, I was shooting a 400 grain arrow. It was on the lightest kind of weight I could shoot at 60 pound, because my mates at 3D had kind of wised me up on getting me pins closer together and whatnot. And I felt really proficient with it, like, at home, out to 40 meters, I felt really confident and comfortable with it, and I went to the shop, turned it up to 70 pounds. I went from 400 grain arrows, 400 spline arrows, down to a 250 spline arrow. And, I don't exactly know what happened. Like, talking to the bow tuner, he said maybe my nocks were a little bit light. Maybe the bow was just,
a little bit, not tight enough, like loose.
Yeah, a little bit loose on the string, but it could just be the fact that that bow model was like 2019 model, were known for breaking. So long story short, I'd gone to the shop, turned it up, got the 250 arrows all sorted out. I'd gone home and started getting my heights and my pins right. And I drew back on one and it pulled a little left. And then I'm like, that's strange. And then I pulled back on the next one. It pulled further left. That's really weird. Pulled back the next time and it made a horrible sound. I never want to.
What was it? This a big old crack?
I never want to hear it again. It was just this like horrible crack, and I'm at full draw, right? And I've never had that feel. I've never been scared by a compound. It was the first time. I'm like, so I pretty much let the thing down and then had a look at it, and it fundamentally had done a bit of a delamination crack in the center of the limbs. So thus started the whole cyclone effect of me trying to get it fixed,
With a strict deadline.
Yeah, it's a very strict deadline of getting out on this hunt. And I was, I'm a resourceful bloke. So I'm like, right, I'm going to get this thing fixed because I'm used to this bow. So the stubbornness in me tried to find limbs. I drove around. I called every contact I could. I bloody went to a bunch of different shops trying to find things and just couldn't figure it out. So, driving down the Gold Coast trying to find limbs and just didn't happen. So I ended up going to shop in Brisbane, and I just bought another bow. I got this PSE. It was a brute, 70 pound. And the bloke at the shop helped me, tune it as best he could, but we couldn't get it to paper tune. It was still shooting a little knock left, and we couldn't do much about it. He was like, look, I'll do a bit of research. We'll figure out how to get the shims for it, to tune the cams and whatnot, because it was a new bow to him. So I took it home. I got all the pins, set for height and whatnot with the field points. Was feeling pretty comfortable with it. Then I went back. This is 2 days out from the hunt.
Yeah. No, wasn't it on the Thursday?
I think it was on the Thursday. Yeah, but I only had a short amount of time to go back to the shop so that he could do the final paper tune to get me shooting good with the knock lefts, so that I could broadhead tune. So anyway, we went back there, couldn't get it finished, and ran around in circles. And he's just like, I said, mate, look, it's coming up so soon. Like, I didn't want to do it, but just what's the next level up? And as Maddie, I'd heard from Maddie before, buy once, cry once.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's incredibly true because so I went up to a PSE Evolve. It's a John Dudley knock-on edition, I believe it is. So it's I'm a tall bugger. I'm like 6'3", so I was shooting 30.5 in the draw, and this thing goes all the way up to 32. And it's a 70 pounder. So got it straight out of the box. He tuned it for me there, and shout out to Michael. Thank you very much for everything you've done for me at Apex. And straight away the thing paper tuned bullets, and I'm like, oh wow. And as soon as
it just goes to show, right? And it's sucky because I think people will go into a shop and say, okay, well, $800, $900 bow, that's something I can justify. But then on this back end side of it, where you actually go out for a hunt and you want to try paper tune it and make sure the broadhead tuning in the shop, they don't necessarily always tell you that stuff. I think like the cool thing about Apex and Michael is the fact that he's a hunter. So he'll always do his absolute best to make sure you're hunt ready. But they don't necessarily always do that in shop. And that was kind of the experience that you had at the previous one that you went to, where they miscut the arrows and they're like, oh, you'll be right. Just fix it up, just square it up at home. And you're like, what? Like, I don't know.
And it's stuff. Like, I definitely put it down to the fact that, I should have got it done earlier, right? It was my mistake. But in the end, I learned a valuable lesson. And so I ended up on this newer bow. And, the biggest thing I took out of it, the silver lining, right, is that I learned so much about bow setup, man. Like I knew how to shoot a bow, but I had no idea about setup. And
that was what I was going to get to, is the whole fact of a $900 bow versus going up. It is double the price you had to pay in the end, but you're literally getting out of the box and it's almost paper tuned. And if not, it's only a few small tweaks to make. Yeah. And it's ready to rumble.
And honestly, as soon as I pulled back on the bow, I was like, wow, that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Yeah.
And because I'd been shooting 30.5, it wasn't quite right for me. Mm-hmm. When I set the thing to 32, I was just like, wow, it just went straight to anchor point straight away. Everything just felt comfortable. So this is a couple of days out from the hunt.
It was literally Thursday and we went on Friday.
Mate, so I've gone back Thursday to my house because he's got the paper tuned and everything. And we got it shooting broadhead sweet at the range that we could get at the shop, which was only about 15 meters. So I went home with a major impending storm coming and I'm bloody just setting me pin heights to get them all right. I got me, which is, I found out now most people don't set their pins to 10 and 20 meters, but I did it. So I got me 10 and 20 real sweet. Started mucking around with the 30 and then the storm hit.
Yeah.
So, which will come down later when this stalker had on a billy. I bloody couldn't get the 30 shot because I didn't have the confidence because I didn't get to do it at home. But
which I also like. I like going to this weekend. Like my whole concept was we're going to be doing shots at 20 and under all weekend. Like, because it's your first time hunting, that's just the best way to go with it.
Yeah, so I'd focused on that. But under 20 meters, I felt super confident with the bow straight away. Within the hour and a half, 2 hours, I'd set me pins up at home and probably pulled a lot more arrows than I should have. Most of my mates, like 30 a day, mate. Don't know any more than that. And I reckon I pulled so many this week. I can't even remember. I know my shoulders are hurting still.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the same time, it's the excitement of it, especially getting a new bow now. I'm hoping that this has just made it more hungry and like made you more hungry for it too.
And honestly, like I'd mucked around with that other bow for a long time. The difference between that entry level bow and that kind of mid level bow, like phenomenal difference. Just everything about it was just so much better. And it's like, I am kicking myself now because I'm a bit of a stubborn prick. And I'm like, me partner, Angela's just like, when I come home with the bow and I'm all happy and she's just like, you're an idiot. Should have done this last week.
From the start. Yep.
I'm like, I know.
Well, it's so funny because you message me, you go, bro, my limbs cracked. Then I get another message saying, it's all good. I found a set of limbs. And then you send me a message, oh, I got the limbs, but I now need to get a new string.
I was devastated.
And I'm like, do not wait for that string. That is not coming in time. I'm like,
And mate, shout out to the bow community because they did rally around us. Like, luckily, my mates I used to work with were right into the 3D shooting and they were down south on a national shoot. And I'd spoken to the blokes and they'd all rallied. They heard I had the hunt coming up and it's like how quick the community
jumped into it for you.
Yeah, jumped in to try to help, I think it was bloody the fella from
Big Fella Bowstrings.
Big Fella Bowstrings. Like, he was up down on the national. He's like, oh, I might have some limbs at home. Just let me, as soon as I get home, I'll let you know. And so anyway, when the string broke, I called old matey from Big Fella Bowstrings. I'm like, please, buddy, please, can you help me there? Can you help me? And he's like, look, I can do it. I can help you, but I won't have it till Friday. And I'm like, bugger. And that was the kicking teeth that I needed. And Michael at the shop's like, why don't you look at the PSE Evolve? Let's just size you up on that. And one shoot through the paper. I'm like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So good on them. Shout out to them. They bloody helped me out so much.
I think that is the value of having someone who is a hunter behind the store and the sale as well, it does make a big difference, because if you've never done hunting, you don't necessarily, like, yes, you might know that there's the bow tuning that you have to do for the broadheads to the field points and stuff, but is there the care to actually warrant going ahead and doing that? Or is it the simple fact of, hey, the person at the shop's been told we don't have the resources to do it. Like, we can't help tune it because that's just not what we do here. So it is a bit of a difficult situation where you're trying to get people to have great experience of coming into bow hunting, and it's just not necessarily happening because they don't have whatever it is, the manpower or is it care? I don't know. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah,
So,
that's the biggest thing I took away from Michael. It was like when I told him I was going on the hunt, you could just see the excitement in his eyes.
yeah.
And he heard the word first hunt.
Yeah.
You know, he's just like, mate, we'll do whatever we can. We're going to sort you out.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. You know, and after the first tune, I'm like, man, how can I pay you back? And he goes, you have a good hunt. That's all I want. I just want you to have a good hunt, mate.
Such a legend.
And it's just cool to see like how quickly the community comes together, you know, and like, I'd only shot at home privately, so I'd never really experienced it, you know, and yeah, this weekend, my God, what an experience. Like I thought, like I had what would you call it? A naive understanding of what I thought hunting was. And it was very far from what it was.
I mean, that's the best thing. That's what we get to explain now. So very first afternoon, we come out in that same storm that you got to witness the day before. We're walking up the hill and there's literally like lightning striking. I mean, I was counting the thunder to make sure we weren't right in the heart of it.
Yeah.
It was pretty close.
I was frothing.
It was cool. It was good. And we started getting rained on as soon as we started walking up the hill. I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? I had to ask. I'm like, do you feel comfortable doing this? Like,
yeah, and I felt like saying, I'm a bit of a sadist, mate. This is exactly what I love doing. So let's go.
Yeah, and we got up and I'm like, I really don't know what's going to be happening given that there's literally a thunderstorm going on. There was some big ass thunders like rolling through, right? I'm like, it's just like gunshot after gunshot. I don't know what the animal's going to be doing. I'm sure they've just hunkered down somewhere. I've hunted in like heavy rain. I've never hunted in like thunderstorms and such. So I was like, this is a new experience for me too. We're going to learn. And so we went to a place where I knew the goats always hung out. And it's kind of like, as we got to the top, the storm was somewhat clearing, just not as loud as what it was before. And all the goats just started appearing for us.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like walking out into that storm, and plus, like the place we went to, God, the beautiful nature of it, right? Just walking up this hill into the rain, and I'm like, what an adventure, you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I was frothing.
1,000,000% thank yous go to Josh for that, for giving us the access and ladies to do that. It was, grateful to be able to go back again. It's just such a beautiful block. And we were saying that just even this morning, like if you don't remind yourself to stop and take in those views, you forget about it, but you take it in, you're like, oh my God, it's so lucky just to have that.
Yeah. And I think me and you have like, you know, I feel like we've both got a kindred spirit when it comes to the love for nature.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's just like so many times I caught myself looking at things, I'm like, my God, it's beautiful out here.
Yeah.
Haven't heard a sound. All I've heard nature and Billy's, you know, little noises in the, you know, we're all stop and think, what is that? You know, and it's just, God, it was fun.
Yeah. So we get up the top and we actually didn't see the goat to start with. It saw us before we saw it up on top of the hill. And I was like, okay, well, whether there's one goat, there's going to be more. And sure enough, there was a big mob that were just moving their way down. And so there's one Billy who's kind of looking at us from afar. He's like, something's up there. I'm like, let's just go slowly. We're just going to sidestep a little bit so we're out of vision. And then we're going to try and cut these guys off because they were making their way back down the hill. And so I was like, they might be on their way somewhere. I don't know, but we should be able to kind of track them down and catch up to them. And within that, I guess it's kind of like the best way to explain it is there's a bench, a hill, a bench, a hill, a bench, a hill. It's kind of, they were just going down the very first, probably the second bench they were going down to that. And so I'm like, well, we could cut them off at this very first bench. So we kind of made our way over and we're probably 35 off them at that point. And then they went down to the next hill. So we got down to the next hill and, do you remember any of like the first thoughts of the stalk, and was there any real tips or anything that I kind of said to you to start with? Like, hey,
I think the biggest thing for me was I've never been hunting before, and it's like Matty had sent me some videos looking at shot placement and all those things, and I'd done me background homework, but I had no understanding of what stalking was.
Yeah.
I just thought you'd like come in and kind of sneak up on them. I had no understanding of winding and all these things, and you know I was there to learn, right, and learn it from the best. So I just monkey see, monkey do. You know, you stop, I stop. You move, I move.
Yeah.
It amazed me how innate the feeling was that like I kind of knew what to do and just following your lead
natural.
clearly.
Yeah, yeah.
But it felt very natural, right? So first thing I noticed was the smell.
Yeah.
Was the goats. They had a very distinctive smell. And that's what probably the first, I do have a good sense of smell. That's the first thing I kind of noticed was they're over here somewhere because you can smell them.
Yeah.
But yeah, the stalk, I suppose, it's tricky because I was so nervous too, right?
Mm.
And in my mind, like, because I'm a dirt bike rider, so I know how to deal with stress, but I'd never dealt with this. I knew that there'd be this adrenal rush and there'd be this like stress that had come over, but fundamentally, like we found the mob, we kind of stalked around. We made sure, when they're looking at us, we stopped. When we made the movement, when they had their backs to us, Matty made sure we had the wind in the right spot. We made the stalk in. I think we got into about 20 meters.
Yeah, there was times when we were 20, there was times when we were closer. There was one Billy that was kind of onto us, and he kind of just kept looking back, and then he's like, it's not moving, it should be fine. I don't know, they're very docile, these goats in particular. They haven't been hunted heaps, so they're pretty forgiving. In that circumstance, based on where you hunt, that would be potentially not end of a hunt, but they would run off, take the whole mob with them. But we definitely got kind of caught out in the open twice, and he's like, nah, it'll be fine. And then went down with the group. And so we went down the hill and kept following them down. And there was one spot where we got to, and they were kind of just mulling around this log, eating all the grass and stuff. I'm like, this is where we're going to get a shot for sure. So I got you to have, I think this is the second time. I'd already told you to get an arrow on. So you walked down the hill with the arrow on.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay.
Nervous as shit.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, here's the goat you get to shoot. This one's I think it was at 15 meters.
Yep.
And then it actually started walking up the hill to us and coming closer and closer. And I didn't know, because you were saying they're coming back up. And so I'm just watching the one goat, because I'd kind of blocked
You're
off
on the right
everything
side
else.
of the tree. You're looking on the right side of the tree. I was on the left side.
So I was on the left side as well, but I wasn't
that's right,
looking on the
sorry.
right side. You could see, because you're behind me or off to the side a little bit, you could see them going back up the hill.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got a shot. You're like, how far? I'm like, 12. I'm like, 10 maybe. I'm like, just use top in.
Yeah.
And then talk us through that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I must have pulled bloody 80 arrows in the last week at home, shooting 10 or 15. So I don't know why my brain went like, what's the distance? Because,
Well, it's hard because it's different when it's a downhill or uphill, or there's like dead ground. It was like on a little road that stepping up. So it looked like it could have been further than what it actually was. And had you seen a goat before? Do you know the size of a goat? It's just
exactly.
all those little things play into it.
So when he was in that range, I knew he was in me 15. He was kind of broadside, and then I'm like, here's me shot, because I know broadside's the go. And he'd kind of like, that's right. I'd stepped out, I'd made the decision, I'd drawn back. And as I'd drawn back, he kind of turned from broadside, and he kind of started coming up the hill at me. And I'm like, I know I can get a clean straight through the front shot. Just got to be bloody accurate. So, I've taken the shot, and Matty's, I didn't realize, but I'm like, all right, yep, all good. And Matty's turned around, and my legs are shaking like a leaf in the storm.
I was trying to watch the goat, and all I could see was your leg in the corner of my eye.
It's honestly, like, I don't remember it. I don't remember my legs shaking.
Yeah,
I just remember
crazy.
taking shot. Yeah, that adrenal dump is real.
Yeah. It just like knees knocking.
It was wild. It was wild. Like, it took me a little while for my brain to snap back into action again. So it's like, took the shot, and then he's darted off maybe 10 meters away, and he's bedded down.
No, it would have been, so he'd probably run 30 where he's bedded to, yeah.
Well, there you go. So it's like my mind is remembering things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because you're like, pinned him. I actually didn't see where the arrow went, but what I did see was the exit wound. And I'm like, there's not enough coming out of that exit wound for me to be like 100% confident.
Yeah, so Matty's like, get in and do the follow-up shot.
I'm like, you're going to have to get a second arrow on it as quick as you can.
Yeah, so stop the leg shaking.
Yeah. I'm like, and so I just kind of said like, look, this is the path you should take, based on where he is and based on where the other goats had gone.
Yeah.
And then, talk us through that. What was going on in your head during that time?
Well, it was like the adrenal dump, obviously, and then like the brain snapped back into action once you got to get around there and do your secondary shot, because he's bedded down. So I've snapped another arrow on the string, and then gone up the hill, kind of around, got a good angle on him, and I'm like, I think I was at about 15, and you're like, I could see you signaling me closer.
Yeah, I'd try and do bird calls and everything too. I'm like,
which is something like, this would be a good thing to learn sign language anyway. So I've, walked into about 12, put the final shot on him. And that adrenal dump hit me again. And like this time it was emotion. And it's wild because like the first thing I thought of was when I put my dog down when I was younger, I was like, just a big emotional response. I didn't expect it to be be truthful, right? And it kind of shook me a bit. But I suppose that's the rite of passage, I imagine, right? Like, I've been fishing and I've killed things before, but never in that scale.
And we kind of talked about it afterwards. I think it would be it'd be interesting it'd be more so weird if you didn't have a response to it, right?
Yeah, you'd be worried about sleeping in the camp that night with a fella that didn't have a response, right?
Yeah, and I think back to my first skills and the same thing. Very, very emotional about it, and like things don't necessarily always go to plan. like we kind of figured out in that very first experience, right? Not like I'm kind of as it's not that I'm happy about it, but I'm glad that it wasn't just as all easy as possible because we literally walked from the base of camp, we walked up a hill and you shot a goat.
Yeah,
And so
like
it's like it
and honestly, I was like, "Is hunting this easy?"
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
That's
But
the way
it's
it
like,
comes across. I'm like,
yeah,
no.
it was just we fell into a purple patch. I found out later in the hunt, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, did the final shot and then kind of come down and sat with him. Matty's come over and, you know, like obviously I'm quite emotional at this stage and, you know, it was good that I had Matty there to like tell me, you know, now's the time to respect the animal, you know, give him that thank you and sit with it. And the emotion was strong. It was hard. It was pretty hard to deal with actually, to tell you the truth, but it was like a mix of euphoria, accomplishment, and kind of there's a little bit of shame and guilt there, you know what I mean? Because like, I don't know. I still can't explain it, but
Well, I think there was a few things that you kind of said, like, I'm only going to do a broadside shot
Yeah.
to start with. And then
So I
when
had-
it didn't,
yeah.
you were really beating yourself up about that.
yeah, I'd broken my own boundary in that fact that like he was broadside, and when I pulled back, as soon as I pulled back and he turned and started walking towards me, I suppose it was my ego. It's like, no, mate, he's close. You can put him right you can put him right between the shoulders. It'll be fine. But you know, I told myself previously that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a big lesson for me. And I, you know, later in the weekend, it come back where, you know, I made the decision not to let that ego fucking take over and I drew down. So,
Yeah.
you know, I know now that's a valuable lesson.
I think it's also something that everyone who bow hunts is going to have to witness at some point in time too. Unfortunately, it's just like you're constantly battling that. And the other side of it is you do get to a phase of like, I really want to get this done. And I don't want to say desperation, but it's like, I've come here to get this job done. Is right here in front of me, this opportunity right now. And if I don't take it, does that mean I'm never going to get it again? Like that's almost like the despair that your brain goes to, despite it not necessarily being the truth. But we had a pretty intense moment where we've got goats literally walking straight back up the hill at us. You've got this one in your sights right in front of you. And I don't think you necessarily did anything wrong in thinking like, oh, I can still take this frontal shot, like it will work. Yeah, it's the fact that you'd set a boundary and you overstepped it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they say every time you step over your own boundaries, you like yourself less a little bit more and more. And it's like, it did hurt.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, this is a big reason as to why we always advocate, like, for your first shots, don't take frontal shots because it's such a small window and essentially your line was perfect. You're just low.
Yeah, 100%. And it'll haunt me, but it's taught me a very, very valuable lesson, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we're able to see the silver lining of it as well, of the fact like, hey, we did get the goat and it was only, it ran, 30 meters away and then you got to have a second shot at it. So it wasn't ridiculous in regards to, it wasn't like we had to trek it for days or anything like that to make it all happen. So
yeah,
it all worked out really well, as shitty as it made you feel.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting was the turning point for you.
Well, it was really interesting. As soon as we sat and we respected the animal and we sat with him for a moment and, you know, Matty helped, you know, kind of helped me through that situation of dealing with that emotion. It was like, once we respected the animal and then sat down and you know, I'd never actually processed that animal either. So as soon as Matty ran me through how to process the animal and we started processing it, that feeling washed away. It was a feeling of, well, I'm using this meat. I'm going to eat this animal.
It's not going to waste.
100%.
It wasn't a life wasted.
Yeah, it was a feeling of accomplishment straight away. It's like, I know that this has served a better purpose. And that lesson, you know, albeit painful, is very valuable, you know? So it taught me a lot. And then the next stage was processing the animal, which I'd never done before. Fillet not a fish, you know, so I know my way around cutting things, but it was really interesting how easy it was. Like obviously having a good teacher, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be to process an animal.
You thought there was going to be more joints and stuff like that you had to cut through and...
Well, honestly, I thought it would be difficult emotionally too. But
Yeah,
it was like the instant I started processing and I'm like, this is going in my tummy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know, I suppose that caveman feeling of like, I've got food for the family.
Yeah, exactly. Provided now.
Yeah, and then honestly, I've shot bows for years and with the intention of wanting to go hunting, and I'd finally done it, you know, and it was a big moment.
Yeah.
I remember it for a bloody long time.
Oh, definitely. You always remember first.
Yeah.
First of each species in particular.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, so that was the first fella. So we, you know, packed him all up. We put him in the bloody, what do you call it? The game bags and
Yep.
a load of my backpack, which I found out obviously is another thing I'll need to learn how to train. My traps were killing me by the end of the day, but yeah.
We went and had a bit more fun. We went up the hill. There was still the goats. They were just literally a couple hundred, maybe 100 meters up the hill. And I got up there because you're like, yeah, go have a shot. So I went up and there was literally 100 goats around us. But all the goats that I kept coming up on were all small. They were the nannies and they had they had little kids with them. And I'm like, well, I don't want to take that. Like, I don't know. At the same time, I'm like, obviously the farmers want you to get rid of them. But I was also like, I don't want to be cruel in the sense of just leaving this kid to die here. I don't know how reliant they are on them or if a kid would get adopted by another goat or not.
Yeah.
But yes, actually it was like very reserved in shooting. And then I heard pigs squealing and I was so close. I literally had goats all around me and there was this billy walking up the hill. I'm like, if he comes close enough, I'll get a good shot here. And then the pigs kept squealing and I was like, I was getting too excited about the pigs. So I backed out and ended up scaring the goats when I was backing out. But then this boar literally walked up in front of us and he had his scent on something and he just would not stop. And he just kept walking and kept walking. I'm chewing and I'm making little noises, trying to get him to stop. And he just wouldn't give me anything. And yeah, he just kept going. Unfortunately, he just got away from us.
I was about 15 meters away watching it all happen, that was a great experience too, just watching Matty in his element, you know what I mean? It's like, it was cool to watch. Like just learning from that experience, right?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, and then that was literally like nightfall pretty much. So we trekked our way back down. And it's funny how much, this is the second time I've gone to this block and I know where we had to go, but still just once the night comes on and you don't necessarily know where every drop of the block is or every cliffside is or anything like that, you're like, okay, I know we got to go this way and there's fences here and here that we got to get to. I don't necessarily know how we're going to get there.
And there was also that antler thing too, eh? It's like after you'd mucked around with the pig, because I had all the gear on my back too, so I've like, we're heading uphill and I'm like, oh, look at that, a bloody antler, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I picked it up, I've carried it for a while and, I hadn't learned really how to carry my bow correctly, so the tops of my forearms are fucking killing me. I'm carrying this antler and I didn't really think much of it. I'm like, oh, I'll put it down. I put it down and, I'll catch up with you later and tell you about it. You're like, that's a bloody good omen, mate.
Yeah, man, that's a great omen. You need to keep that.
Oh, bugger.
But it's so funny because we were talking about it and I've been like just doing some YouTube searching and stuff to figure out what is the topics that actually beginners and stuff are looking for. Like people in bow hunting, what are you looking for topic wise? Based on the searches that are happening. One of the biggest searched YouTube like things is literally how do you carry your bow when you're hunting? And I thought it was just so funny because it's like it was something that came to mind for you. So we talked a little bit about it, but at the same time I got the quiverizer with me.
Yeah, you said you're gonna get quiverizer jealousy when we're out there. I'm like, what are you?
Yeah.
And as soon as I seen you carrying it on your shoulder, I'm like, wish I had one of them.
Yeah, I get it now. Yeah, so I mean, carrying the bow, what did you find worked best for you? Because you've got a pretty heavy bow.
Yeah, so it's like 33 axle to axle. So it is weighty. So I've got like a side quiverizer.
Side quiver.
Yeah, side quiver. Sorry. And then it just like I think it's 6.5 inch stabilizer at the front. So the way I ended up carrying it was carrying the bow upside down with this, and it was like the top end of the bow was more heavy. So I'd let the stabilizer kind of like bury itself into the back of my forearm, and then I didn't have to engage my forearm to keep the front up.
Yeah.
And then I'd swap from right to left, to right to left, to right to left. And then I tried over the shoulder a few times and my traps were giving out. So, yeah, I just grit and bear it the first day, you know what I mean? And it's like, that was another valuable lesson too.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll learn how to do.
If I'm not carrying it on my shoulders with the quiverizer, like if I'm just walking place to place, I literally just hold the handle, but sometimes I'll flip it completely upside down. So the string's facing down and I'm holding the bow from that end and walking with it and just change arms as you go.
It's interesting too. I'm like, I'm going to have to start having Stairmaster into me, cardio routine because like I'm pretty fit, but God, me calves,
up those hills,
everything was blowing up.
Yeah, definitely. So that was kind of end of day one. We got back and we did the gutless method when we butchered your goat and we kept fur on just because of the fact that there was other goats there. And I was like, let's get through this and we can keep hunting. Yeah. So we kept the hides on and then we got down and then we had to take the skins off and hog the ankles off and stuff like that and all the hoofs off. So we did that and showed you that process. And then in the morning we were up nice and early and out at it. So we got after, I knew it was going to be kind of deer on the way up, like seeing deer. And originally when we talked to the farmer, Josh, he was like, just leave the deer. I'm like, yeah, that's no worries at all. And then he's like, I saw a heap of deer there the other day when I was there. He's like, feel free to take one if you want with the bow. And I was like, okay, we'll I guess play with the idea, but I also wasn't like, I didn't have my heart set on it as being like a thing that we had to do. And so we're walking along the creek and sure enough, we saw a deer. I'm like, this is a good opportunity for you to go and have a stalk on it. I'm like, she's just here. All you need to do is just duck over this way and then start to make your way up. And when
Jump
you
the
get to
fence,
this,
goes
you
really
get when you get to this point, just look back at me and I'll tell you where you need to go. Like, because you always get lost in that situation where you don't. I mean, not always, but you see something on the other face and you try to get to it, and then you get underneath it. You're like, oh, I can't see it because all the bushes and stuff. The perspective changes. And so in this situation, I'm like, I'll stay here. You get over there and I'll tell you where to go. And so you got into like the perfect position and you're like, which way? I pointed and he just stormed off like,
oh man, yeah, what an idiot.
and it was so funny because you took probably 5 steps. So I was like, I can't even make a bird noise or anything to get your attention.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I know now that signal meant get your binos out, you fool.
yeah.
And spot where it is. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought he meant like it because, you know, in all honesty, when I got over there, I thought, oh, he's about 60 meters that way. I've still got 20 meters I can charge through before I. Because honestly, I'd never stalked a deer either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I really didn't set you up for much success.
No, it was, you know, I like learning lessons the hard way. And then, you know, stalking deers later with you, I noticed how bloody hard they are. So, you know, when you'd signal me up the hill, I'm like, oh, I'll just get another 10 meters and I'll stop and have a look. Whereas now I know, look first.
Yeah.
Right? So I'd probably taken 10 meters of steps and whoosh, off he went.
Yeah, she's just up the hill.
Yeah,
Off she goes. Yeah. And it was so funny because she wasn't aware you were there at all.
Yeah.
She was facing down the hill though. And so, of
Pretty
course,
thick scrub.
yeah, exactly. And so, of course, as soon as you like step through and bush bash a little bit, she's just poof, ears up. See ya. I'm out of here. And then you look at me like, now what? I'm like, get back here. There's no more hunt to do.
Yeah.
And then we actually had a really good stalk on some deer. So we were coming up the hill, and the way that they tend to sit is always in a position where they can see down the hill, but you can't necessarily see them. So they can see your legs and stuff before you can even see view of them, which is they're just smart. It's the way that they are. They're just aware. They're always eyes on. They're skittish kind of animal, even though they don't necessarily have like a heap of predators around. They're very aware of setting up themselves. So where they're feeding, they can always be in the best scenario for themselves. And so we're walking up and we kind of came into this flat area, and we were taking it very slow coming onto this flat area, and we were using the trees as our backdrop. And I walked from one tree to the other, and I actually didn't see them, and you saw them first. Yeah, Maddie, up here. And she did catch a little bit of movement, and she was just watching us. She wasn't too sure, but she just watched, and then she just went back to feeding eventually. So we just watched them for a while, and then they started feeding down the hill, but on an angle away from us. And so there was a lot of dead ground between where they were going and where we were, that we could just literally run across the field, get to where they were going to be, and be pretty close in on them. So we made a mad dash and got over, well, still using the trees and stuff. And then they had we weren't sure if they were going to come down one valley or the next one. And essentially they took down the next one. And once again, you kind of saw them like, oh, they're over there. And it really kind of set us up quite well because they were coming down to the next bench where they were going to start eating again. And we got down to the next, we were kind of creeping around the side of this downward hill that leads onto the next bench. And as we got around, we noticed that they'd met up with another bunch of deer. So there was now 10 of them.
Yeah.
8 maybe. I think it was 8. And it was kind of perfect scenario where they're out in the open, but there's a big bunch of trees between where we are and they are. So we just had to get down without being seen from this kind of slant side that we were on, and use the trees as our cover to be able to walk up. And so I think the biggest thing I gave you was like, just stay on my tail. Do not go Indian file. Do not move off to the side. Just stay on my tail as much as you can.
It was almost reading your body language, like going from the goats to the deer. You went to like hunter, super stealth. And you're like, be in my footsteps, be in my shadow. Do what I do. Stop when I stop, move when I move. I'm like, yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Roger. Yeah.
Which was cool. It was like innately, like that just felt easy. Like I started instantly like putting my feet down when you put your foot down. You know what I mean? And I'm like just trying to be in the shadow pretty much.
Yeah, you did have a lot of awareness. A lot of people don't necessarily come in with that. I reckon that's fires, or is that? That is. Yeah, wow.
We're just on the drive home.
Yeah. But yeah, a lot of people don't necessarily pick that up. So you did really well just to clue onto that. And so we got into some trees and we're probably 60 meters away from it at this point. And then they moved off to another little area. So we got to go again, stalk up to the next set of trees. And once again, we were probably 60 or so. And then just the 4 that we had followed down to this other group decided that they were going to cut back across the field and come directly in front of us. And so they passed us at like 45, 50 meters. Which is just so cool to watch, I think, as a process. Like there's a few yearlings and a few does just literally milling their way across. And I think they're just such a pretty deer, these these fallow deer. So it's cool. In my eyes, I was like, heck yeah, I'm so glad that we get to experience this. For
Mate,
like you getting to see deer in the wild.
it was fucking exhilarating. Like, honestly, like, because obviously I'd made such a botched attempt the day before with the deer and the bloody up the hills, like, no idea what I'm doing. But then behind you, you know, how quickly it become exciting because you're in control of what was happening. And obviously we got bloody close to them, right? And it's like, you know, they're a beautiful animal. And realizing how flighty they are, you know, it was an exciting thing, like getting up that close, standing there watching them, just hoping the buggers would start to walk towards us.
Yeah, I'm like, just come like 10, 20 meters closer and we're good. Yeah, I think, but what was funny is that we were so busy watching the 4 come down and essentially we had a tree blocking us if we were facing straight on. And then when we turned side on watching these deer, our bags are just sticking out the back of this tree.
Yeah.
So all the other deer looking at us while these 4 deer go down the hill. I'm like, I look across at these deer and they're just looking at us like, what are you?
Yeah.
And then of course that was that kind of hunt over.
It was interesting too. I'm like, what now? And you're like, that's it, man.
Yeah, we're done.
Stalk's over. They've got our number.
Yep. Yeah. There's no point chasing them now. They're disappeared into the bush, into the thick stuff. And so we end up going back up the hill, trying to find the goats where they like to hang out, or like a big batch of them tend to hang out a lot. And so we got back up there, and the wind was just not playing quite nice when we got there. And so we got up the top and ran into this like big mob of goats. So kind of just down on the face a little bit. It was just swirling a lot. And every kind of step that we would take, what we didn't necessarily account for was other goats that were down in the bushes kind of deeper than where we were. And
that mum with the two bubs.
The mum with the 2 bubs. And there was another one that happened. And so we just we took the steps just a little bit too far. And then the goat that was kind of downhill from us would get winded. They'll get wind of us and then they would duck off again. Which was just a bit frustrating. Not frustrating. It's just part of the hunt really. But it was just, they would then take the other goats with them. So we just kind of played cat and mouse for a long time. They came up this hill. Where we had kind of come from, we weren't far enough across for where we need to be for these goats, but we also didn't expect them to necessarily be there. And so we need to be further right. So we end up just doing like a massive loop around, doing a massive kind of around as far right as we could. And by this stage, they had gone over to the right and then did a hard left as soon as they got to the top of the hill. And so then we were kind of facing them along this hill and in very rocky country, trying to like rock jump from one rock to the other to get onto these goats. And I was really trying to get onto this one billy that I saw. I'm like, oh, he's nice and gray coat, really nice and set of horns on him. I'm like, I'd love to get him. So I was trying to follow him up, but then he's following a girl and then she's taking her kids with them. They just kept moving. It just seemed like no matter what we were doing, they were somewhat onto us still because we had winded them previously. And then you're calling out to me right as he's actually looking at me. I'm like, just like,
that's obviously
I put my hand down. Like, I can't
fatal
talk.
mistake. Because I seen deer, and I'm like, Matty, deer over here, and you're just like hand up. I'm like, oop,
yeah,
don't do that again.
No, it's good because obviously communication is one of the biggest and hardest things to do in the bush as well. But
sometimes silence is the best, right?
Yeah. And so I literally walked around the corner trying to chase this billy up, and because I hadn't looked back at you at that stage, bad on my behalf. But yeah, I go around to this billy and he'd just come over the loop, over the top of the lip. And the deer were just on like the road, essentially, like the dirt road. They're just hanging out up top there. And I'm sitting at 40 meters. They're just looking straight at me. I'm like, okay, this is not happening. So they ran off and then we kind of just reconvened and like, okay, what are we doing here? Let's go back after these goats. Let's reconvene and get up. Cause they're kind of going up to the very top of the hill, right? They're going to this flat area, which is the same space where Adam and Geordie and I all had a lot of good fun when we were there last time. So I'm like, we're going to get up here and there's probably going to be goats everywhere. We're going to be in for a bit of a session if we take it, if we're graceful with it, but also knowing that the wind was not necessarily massively in our favor on half of the hill, but it would be for the other half. And so we got up there and literally as we got to the top, these 3 goats just walked straight in on me. And so I just quickly ranged. I'm like, yep, that's good. And then they walked around the corner into pure view of me. I took a shot and hit this nanny front on. And she ran and I was like, she's going down. She's going down. And she just ran out of view. I'm like, oh, I'm sure she's dead. Like, I'm sure I did a good shot on that. And we followed the blood and there was heaps of blood. I'm like, she's dead. Where is she? Like, she's just going to be here. And we probably got to 40 meters of blood, and it looked like she tucked into this tussock of grass. But what it was is she'd actually brushed through the grass, so it completely threw us off where we thought we had to go left at that point. And so we started looking all down this hill. We couldn't find any more specks of blood. We're like, no, we got to go back to that original blood and see if we can find it. Sure enough, it was like a meter on from where that blood was. There was just blood straight in front of it. So she just brushed up hard against it. Obviously, I stumbled into it or something and then just kept going straight. And she just did a bit of a death run down the side of this hill. And she was probably another 30 meters on from that, 20 meters on from that.
Yeah, probably not even.
So, yeah, she probably went, I'd say, 50, 60 meters and piled up.
Under a shady tree.
Yeah. Yeah, it was perfect. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to butcher. You get to go and go hunting. You're going on a solo hunt.
So the excitement started again.
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is kind of where it really, this is the big part of, I guess, the hunt for the weekend that you keep reminiscing on.
Oh, mate, yeah, I'll never forget that, honestly. And it was like more the fact that, you know, like got to do it myself because you were there processing the one you'd put down. So we're at the top of the mountain there, and you're like, there's a bunch over that way, I'm pretty sure. So, you know, go and have a bit of a hunt yourself. And, you know, like a scared little teenager off, I toddled. So walked over and, you know, I'd only bloody walked, I don't know, 60, 70, maybe 80 meters. And I'd spotted a big billy, like big bloody billy. Like straight away, I'm like, holy shit, look at his goatee. That's mean.
Yeah.
So he was in tow of, like, I found out later, there was a little girl on heat that he was trying to get into. So I stalked up on him for a fair while and like got around behind a tree and I had him ranged at about 30 meters and he was milling around like a deadfall pile with this little girl he was trying to get onto, and she's trying to hide under things and whatnot as they do. And I'd never actually seen that behavior, you know, I'd never seen goats in the wild, let alone a fella trying to get onto a little girlie. So
yeah,
it was interesting to see how distracted he was. And I'm just like, oh man, he's spending a lot of time standing still. You know what I mean? I'm like, and between me and him, there's the deadfall trees. I had good cover behind this tree on me right, on me left side, so it was good for me bow to shoot. And I had him at 30 meters, and I'm just like, oh, God, if I just bought this bow the week before,
you know what
I could have got
like.
me pins sweet at 30 because my other bow, you know, quite easily shoot 40, and I felt happy. So, and from the, you know, the previous day, I'm like, I'm not letting this shit happen again. So it's under 20 or nothing. So I'd ranged kind of where that 20 mark was. And I'm like, please come walking this way. Please come walking. I had no other option, right? So I just stood and waited and just watched him through the binos, which was really fun to watch his behavior. But he's standing on top of this deadfall, chest height, 30 meters, broadside, not for like 5 or 6 minutes. I'm like, fuck, I wish Matty was here. He'd take the shot. Yeah. So,
no, it was your hunt. I would
exactly.
Keep going.
That was the cool thing. It was just such a fun experience, you know, like, especially being by myself, you know, I'd make these calls. So I just watched him and waited and waited and waited. And so they ended up shifting off straight into the headwind. I'm like, great, I still got the wind with me. They've moved up towards the fence line. So I've, you know, broken across that open ground and got a bit of cover and watched him. And, you know, like he's ducked off to the right a bit and I dashed around behind a tree, you know, while he's got his back to me looking at his girl. I had him ranged at 25. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing it. I need this extra 5 meters. I want to be under 20. So waited and waited and waited. It didn't happen. So he shot off left across down the hill. So I still had good wind and I had plenty of cover. So I just waited for him to get out of sight. Quickly kind of dashed across and him and his girl had started like walking downhill into this other big section of deadfall. And it was like good thick grass and there was plenty of cover and whatnot. And they were milling around in these like deadfalls. One big tree that was down that was, you know, it was almost neck height and they were milling around underneath it, having fun. You know, she's trying to get away, obviously, I know now. But he's just chasing her flat out. So I'd stalked around, used the wind, like got behind trees. Once again, had him at 25. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing it. So waited for him to move on a little bit more and I'm stalked, you know, I ended up getting right up behind this tree that they were mucking around on. And, you know, it's like, there's a good, you know, I could have crawled underneath the thing to get where they were milling around at the dead pile, which is only 15 meters away. So I was in my shot range. I'm like, sweet, just got to get the shot range. You know, I just got to get a shot at this range. So there was his little girl he was trying to get onto and clearly one of her little bubs. And he's jumping around, you know, being a lookout, obviously. So every time I had a chance, I'd poke my head over the log and I'm like, they're right there. I ranged him at 15 meters. All I need to do is for him to stand up and be broadside for me like he'd done on this other log. So, you know, I'm looking over the thing and I bloody, so I've decided, right, he's He's jumped up. He's close to where I need to be. I've knocked an arrow. I've done everything I needed to do. I've told myself I can do this. Had a little talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, talked about where I wanted it and talked myself through the process. So, naively now I realize what I should have done is in my crouching position, drawn back, stood up. What I'd done is stood up. I had him sighted. He was broadside 15, standing on top of this giant pile, this beautiful big billy. So I've gone to draw back. As I've gone to draw back, because I was a little nervous, there's a little bit of noise come out of my quad rest, and he's instantly turned and looked at me. And I'm just like, fuck. Stood as still as I could. And, he was so preoccupied with the girl. I imagine any other time he just would have been gone, So I've, he's looked away back at his girl again. I've just drawn down, ducked down again. And I could hear him jump off jump off his perch, and he's on the other side of this giant tree fall. I could see his legs, and I'm starting to fucking shit myself. I was honestly, like, am I going to get headbutted by this? Is he going to have me? So, I've heard him clumbering around. I'm like, all right, I'll just let him take his time. I'll wait for him to get back where he was. I'll have another chance. So he's jumped up on this tree that I'm crouched down behind, and he's literally walked directly, his nose was almost touching me.
He's coming over to see what you are.
He's looking straight at me. And it's funny because instinctively, the first thing I did was squint my eyes. I'm like, I don't have eyes. I'm just a rock. I'm just a rock. He's just looked at me. He's so preoccupied with girly. He's seen me. He didn't really, I don't know if he knew what I was or what, or he's just so preoccupied. He's dashed back down and he's got outside my 15-meter range, and, I was devastated. But it was also one of the coolest things I've ever done, right?
Definitely.
It was because he was a big billy too. He's a beautiful big thing, and up close, he was even bigger than I thought he was.
It's just so funny that he was so curious enough to come and check you out.
I do, but I heard it jump up on the log, and I'm head down, crouched down. I hear his hooves across the log above me. I'm like, you are kidding me. I look up, and he's just staring me straight in the eyeballs. I'm like, just squint and pray for the best. So anyway, he nicked off with his girl. And then I ended up standing there for a while, questioning life.
Yeah.
But, honestly, the whole weekend, that was the coolest goddamn experience, right? Because I really did what I wanted. I waited.
I was going to say, props off to you for standing your ground and be like, no, this is the way I'm having it, or no other way.
And it's another major lesson. I knew he was in 15. I knew he was about to stand up on that thing. And if I'd just drawn back, then stood up, it would have been the perfect opportunity to take a bloody good shot. So,
definitely. I mean, that's just such a big learning lesson for everyone, is to draw back behind the whatever it is you're using as a guard or a blank, essentially. So draw back behind that and then stand up or lean out
Yeah, which was wild because although I had stood up, I'd done it so slow. I'd drawn everything up super slow. And when I'd gone to draw the arrow, just because I was a little nervous, the arrow just rattled a little bit, and that was enough to catch his attention. So I had to stop mid-draw. You know what I mean? So I'm holding 70 pound. I'm like, oh God. Anyway, so he's dashed off. I sat there, collected my spirits for a bit. So I trekked all the way back to where he'd processed the other animal. And I'm like, oh, he's not here. He must have gone for another hunt or something, right? So I'm like, oh, I might just go back and see if that billy's there, right? So I've head back, and there was a bunch there, but nothing in range, and I was a little heartbroken. So I sat down on the big rock that he was mucking around on, and I started eating macadamia nuts. And Matty pops out.
Yeah, so I mean, what happened with me is I did the butchering. Now I went over to get my arrow and found my arrow, and I was like, I'm just gonna go around because we're kind of on almost like a tabletop mountain. I'm like, I knew you were in the top left-hand corner. I was just going to go and check out that right-hand corner before I came up to you, just to see what was coming up your tail, if anything. And as I got there, this mob of 3 goats were heading into the fence line. I'm like, oh, I'll just see what happens here. I'll sit off of them and just watch them. And they came right in. I had them at 25 meters, and they just wouldn't come through the fence line. I'm like, damn it. It's just, I don't know, right where because it's sheep line, the sheep fence, essentially your vitals are right on where that wire is. I'm like, there's no clean shot here whatsoever. So unless they come through the fence, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, well, I'll just back out. So I came out and came back to you. And that's when we were just sitting there watching all these goats. And it was so interesting because I'd never actually seen it either, with the billies chasing the girls around on heat.
It was
and
hilarious.
It was. And there was even the young billies, the youngest, they look like they weren't even a year old, and they're trying to get in on it. There's, Yeah, there's probably like what was there? There was one, definitely, maybe two girls. No, it was definitely those because the one that came over underneath us. So there's one over here to the right that
Yeah,
we're watching that
little
we
white
could see
girl.
everything,
Yeah.
and then there was everything else, and the other one that came over to where you went and took your next shot. And so these boys just going wild for it, and then bucking each other off to try and get to it, and yeah, it was just
It was
interesting.
closing time at the pub, mate. They were all she was hot to go. So poor thing. But that little girl that was with the big Billy, she'd nested down somewhere else, and it was just that one girl. But it's the same deal. I was eating macadamias. I'm just looking over at all these beautiful animals, all chasing around and whatnot. And there was some deer over there too.
Deer in velvet, which is always cool to see.
Which I'd never seen, and it was bloody amazing. So yeah, and then I ended up.
Well, they came right. They were coming across, and I don't know. Were you a bit defeated at this
I
time? Or you
was,
just
mate.
needed-
I was eating my macadamias defeated.
Yeah,
I was sitting there like, and I was also, it felt very triumphant, right? Like it was a cool experience, and I suppose there was a big adrenal dump when he jumped up on that log
yeah.
and looked me in the eyeballs. I'm like, fuck, am I going to have to get into a headbutt race here? I'm like, anyway, so when he dashed off, I'll be truthful, I was like not shooken up, but there was a big adrenaline dump from that too.
Yeah.
So me sitting down having the macadamias was me just collecting myself.
Yeah.
And
Because I came across and watched these goats come underneath us.
Yeah, and Matty's just like, here we go, mate.
Yep, just shot. There we go.
And I'm like, a handful of macadamia nuts. I'm like, zip me bag up, put it all back on, and anchor an arrow and start heading down. Then it was in like the same deadfall area where this big Billy and the girl was, which I found out later, it's the little girls hiding in places the big fella couldn't get to.
Yeah. And they're from where we were on the rock, they're all of 15, 20 meters from where we were. So it was an easy stalk down to get to where you need to go.
Yeah, like it was noisy country. But yeah, I made me way down because I'd stalked down there already. I had a little game plan of how to get there, right?
Yeah.
So when I'd gotten down to where the big Billy had looked me in the face, I'm like, oh God, the little girl that he was chasing, she's nestled up in this corner. But there was another big Billy down that Matty had said to go after, and he's down maybe another 20 meters, maybe 30 meters down in the same kind of little hole underneath all this deadfall tree. So, I've walked past the girlie, stalked my way down to old matey, and, I've, got to about 20 meters, arranged him, and I'm like, no, I want to be 10 to 12, So stalked in, and he's underneath all this deadfall, and I've only got, I could only see, I could see his vitals, but I couldn't see the top of his head, and he's standing broadside underneath these logs. So I had, a small window, but I'm like, as soon as I ranged him, and I'm like, that's 12 meters. This is my money shot.
Yeah.
So, got in place, did my shot process, got there, told myself I'm in the right spot, and took the shot, and hit him bottom of heart.
Yeah, so I was cheering. I'm like, you've pickled him. Like, he ran out. I've seen him. He's gone probably 10 meters and done the little shaky leg step, taken another 2 steps. He's fallen off the rock. I'm like, just cheering. I'm like, yes, perfect. Like, it's just redemption from what had happened the day
I give him the
before.
thumbs up because I know in my mind, I'm like, I've hit the triangle. I've done a good broadside shot like what I wanted, right?
Yeah, I'm shaking. I'm like, yes, we're good. I turn the camera off, and then all of a sudden he hops up.
Yeah.
And then falls back down.
Yeah,
I'm like, why is he? I'm like, oh, I must just have a little bit of life left in him.
And in this stage from yesterday's experience, I'm like, I fucking have never got an arrow off me rest so quickly. I jammed a new arrow on it, jumped over the thing. I've stood over him and I'm watching his breathing. And I'm like, oh no, he's gone.
Yeah, dead man walking. He was.
Yeah. And then
it's you only got bottom heart. So it must have just had enough in it to keep pumping away. I don't know. That's the only reason I can kind of come to is that it still had enough to, maybe there's only one ventricle that you took out.
They're a hardy animal.
But they're so hardy, man. They're so ridiculous. I mean, we can probably, we did a little butchering up on the hill then, and we made sure we de-skinned them up there. It's just an easier process rather than having to take them back to camp and do it all again. Gets a little bit of the heat out as well. And then also being that it was the hotter part of the day and we were getting hungry, we're like, okay, we'll go back for food. But yeah, so being a hotter part of the day, it just made more sense to get it as prepped as ready. So we didn't have to do much when we got back at camp. It would let more of the heat out of the animal.
Yeah.
But we can pretty much fast forward because we went for a walk up the hill that afternoon, didn't have any luck with where we were going. So we decided to make a spin and go back to the car and drive across the other side of the hill. And as we get to the other side of the hill, this goat literally just pops his head up over this deadfall that we're driving up.
That was
towards.
hilarious. Like a little teenager
was,
over the fence on a trampoline. Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
literally. And then he ducks back down, keeps eating. I'm like, okay, we're going to reverse down the hill a little bit here. And as I'm reversing, it just does the same thing. Hello, what are you doing? And so we get down. I'm like, let's just sit here for a while. Once this goat loses interest, we'll go up and we'll take a shot. And it all happened reasonably quickly. And you ran to the back because your bow was in the back versus in the boot versus my bow was just in the back seat.
Another valuable lesson for me.
Yeah. So
Don't pack shit away so it takes forever to get it out.
yeah. So I'm like, I grabbed it, literally sprint up the hill.
Yeah.
And I draw back on this goat as it's about to step out, and it walked straight to me. But it was actually, there was a white goat that was closer. And so I've shot it, and it's run that both these goats had just run across the hill. Actually, as I was going up to it, noticed there was probably 6 or 7 other goats just off to the side in the real long grass. And one of them had seen me. I'm like, if I don't take these next few steps, I'm not getting a shot here. I'm like, it's better to just alert these few, hopefully. And it should be fine that I get a shot off just with the way that they were reacting. And it all worked out. So I shot this white one, and it's run over to the next deadfall patch, which is probably 30, 40 meters away. And in the meantime, all of the other goats have run across the field, and then this black one started coming back. So as I'm making my way over to the white one, this black one pops back up. I'm like, you've got a death wish. So I got in nice and close to it and took a shot on her, and she's just run over the side of the hill. And what I didn't realize was the white one, I actually hadn't done a finishing shot. So I was going over, like, okay, I got to get another shot on it. And as I go over the hill then to the black one, it was like just dying so slowly. And this is a painful part where I absolutely hate seeing animals in any form of hurt. And I know that's obviously something that we're going out to do, but we're not going to hurt them. We're going to kill them. And so she's just dying so slowly. So I got my knife out and I got you to come help me because it was in my bag. So I've grabbed her by the horns and just grabbed the knife out to try finish her. And she just would not die, right? We stabbed her in the triangle and she's just going forever. I'm like, we have taken your heart and your lungs out. And
I was amazed as how hardy those animals
bro,
are.
she had a will to live. And I ended up slitting her throat as well. All a bit gory, sorry, but this is literally just what happened. She was still trying to take breaths of air. I'm like, how is this even happening? Like that was actually, it's making me emotional just talking about it because it was such an emotional part of the weekend. I'm like, holy hell, like, yeah, the will to live.
Yeah, it was wild. And I had that big emotional response there too, right? Like I just started crying out of nowhere. I'm like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
But it's so visceral.
It is. And once again, I mean, that emotion kind of goes away once you start butchering them and taking as much meat as you possibly can from them and like honoring that animal. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's an interesting process that you go through. And I think once again, it's relating back to the fact of, if you didn't have that response, it would be worrying.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And it was the biggest thing for me too, was like when you went over to finish her off and you just like, you didn't even say anything. You just looked at me and I'm like, yep, just straight down the hill.
Yeah.
Give you, just to be down there. I don't know what I was going to do, but just down to help there. It was like, it's funny how there's so much unspoken communication in this stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
I still think sign language would be great.
Yeah. Yeah. that takes a few hunts to get your head around.
Just knowing each other.
I mean, the biggest and interesting part of that whole thing was the mob of ghosts. They just sat there and watched us. They're like, oh, what's going on over here? And there was actually a girl on heat there and the boys were chasing her around still. I'm like, this is just so ridiculous.
It was wild, eh?
And this is right on, getting close on nightfall, right? So as we're butchering, it turns to night and we're watching these there was a massive bodied pig across the valley from us. So it was on the neighbor's block. I was so upset because all I wanted this weekend was a pig. And I watched this huge thing walk down to the valley. I'm like, oh, keep coming this way, baby.
I'm just still amazed with naked eyes you've seen that thing.
Yeah.
Like we're butchering away and then all of a sudden you're like, what's that?
Like a K away, like this big.
Oh, really?
You just get used to it. And so that was pretty much day 2 done. And
It's been an exciting couple of days.
It hadn't. I mean, realistically, the night before we woke up in the middle of the night and it was blowing the biggest gale. It was ridiculous, like strong winds. I'm like, if this carries on, we're probably not going to be a hunt in the morning. And then night 2 was actually worse.
I'm a chippy by trade. I'm like, is this roof going to fucking hold it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like,
old tin shed is slapping away at us.
farmer's shed.
And so we hop up in the morning and I just hear the wind howling. I'm like, we're going to snooze for a bit. So I snoozed twice and then I woke us up and we get out. And it's just an absolute gale. Like it's crazy what it was blowing. I'm like,
was that this morning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's literally, if we go.
I was knackered this morning.
Yeah, I know. I'm very tired after a big few days of it and stuff. But I was like, if we go out in this, there's a fair chance we're not going to see anything just with how hectic it is. And then sure enough, we're boiling the kettle to have a coffee and we look up the hill and there's a mob of mob of deer right there.
Yeah,
I'm
because
like,
the day before we'd seen that mob, and
Yeah,
that was the big
big
spiker
mob
that
of
had the
14.
velvet. They had the velvet on it, and I'm just like, that is a pretty animal.
like the prettiest deer we saw all weekend was this spiker. So look, the size of a fawn. Sorry, not the size of a fawn, the size of a doe, just in his size that he was right now, and just like the prettiest spots and orange colors to him,
Just
like
that white polka
just
dots.
vibrant. It was so I'm like, heck, he would make an amazing rug. But yeah, just so cool to watch. And so he actually is standing out from a distance, because he's so orange and has like just bright white to him.
That had kind of made the decision for us, right?
Well, yeah, no, and we're like, okay, well, if they're out where we're going to go to, there's going to probably be deer out there.
Yeah.
And so we weren't going to go up this hill because literally where the deer were is on this massive open face. I'm like, there's no play that we have on them that we can possibly get close enough to even be able to have a shot. So it's best to leave them. And so we went around to this other part of the block this morning, and I was like, look, if they're going to be in the space, they're going to be in either this bowl or on this next little face. And so we get around to the bowl and there's nothing after we had battled with the cows. And I don't, now I actually think about it, this could have potentially even been the start of our undoing, was the cows following us up and down that fence line, because they ran hard into that fence line. If the deer were over this side, they might have already been pre-alert. But anyway, so we came over the bowl. There wasn't anything there. We came into the next part, and as we came into the next part, there's a kangaroo that spotted us and went hard along the ridge line that we were just about to walk along the base of to see if there was deer. And literally, as it ran off, I'd say within 20 seconds of that happening, these deer take off in front of us. I'm like, no, I don't think it's a coincidence.
Kangaroo.
So yeah, that's the joys of kangaroos, right? And it's also what happens, part of the hunting. Kangaroos
I was
and cattle.
calling them cock blockers, you bloody deer cock blockers.
And so I was like, oh, well, we may as well, because the way that ridge works is that you could either walk the whole way along it and then have to go up the hill, which these deer have just taken the whole ridge out, essentially. I'm like, there's no way there's going to be other animals there. Why don't we just go straight up this hill now and go over on top and try and make a play on the deer that we saw this morning?
And you asked me, my calves were saying no.
Your mind said yes pretty quick. You were
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment.
So we made the choice to go and do it. And as we've walked over the hill, we go up to the flats and we're walking through the flats. And then sure enough, we see our orange pretty spiker again.
Yeah.
He's just watching us from the top of the hill. And he kind of moseyed off over the hill. And so we make our way around and we just had to hop over this fence. We're coming down into where this big clearing is. And it's where we had seen them the day before. And sure enough, he pops up again in front of us. So he's probably 60 meters from where we are. And they're kind of he's in one bunch of trees, we're in one bunch of trees. So I'm like, let's just watch and see what he does. And he kind of he was feeding around. It kind of didn't seem like he had a clue of what he was doing, right? Like he was kind of backward, forward, up, down. And then eventually starts making his way up. So I'm like, okay, we can get our way across here. So we got across over into the trees that he was in. And then all of a sudden I see something up high, like high, probably a good 400 meters from where we were. And I think what had happened is there was deer above him that were then watching down on us. And so they'd seen us and run off. And so we just saw probably a good 13 deer run ahead.
Yeah, and mate, it's like, honestly, man, I never understood the intelligence of these animals. Like, it is crazy how aware they are of everything. And just a few times, like, they'd look at us and they'd turn and run. And I was like, all right, what's next? And you're like, that's it, man. It's over.
Yeah, we're done. That's the hunt.
I'm like, God damn it.
They're just so flighty. Yeah, exactly.
But every time we engage with them, that's what made it so exciting. Because I quickly realized that these things are incredibly hard to get close to. And it just was bloody exhilarating every time we'd start to stalk.
Yeah. And so I think in that point in time, I'm like, okay, well, that's our hunt done. We're going to start walking down this hill. And we probably only walked another 30 meters. And sure enough, we saw more deer.
Yeah. One more deer. Like, he was downhill, wasn't he? Like, kind of where we'd started almost.
Yeah. So she was down on, it was like, so if you can imagine where we were looking from the hut was kind of, there was flats. And then above that is tree. And they were in the tree line of the flats. And so we were coming back down onto that space, intentionally hoping that all the deer were still there. But I've now thought that we've spooked all the deer above us. I'm like, okay, well, they're fed up. They've had their morning feed. They've come into the bushes or into the trees, and then we've scared them off. So there's probably not going to be any deer down here. And then, of course, yeah, we take the 30 meters of walking, and then there's more deer just below us. Well, there's one deer, and we look, and then the kangaroo pops out, then another kangaroo pops out, and then all of a sudden another deer pops out. I'm like, okay, we can make a play here. We're going to be battling with the wind, just in the way that it's blowing. at one point it was blowing to our left. Sorry, it's blowing from our left shoulder to our right. But I knew as soon as we get around a little bit further, it's going to be blowing from our right to our left. And then the hard thing is that we're in a bit of a gully, like they're at the bottom of this this bowl like gully, and we're just on the right side, that we're not getting sucked down into them. But I'm like, we need to get in line with them before we can move across on them. Otherwise, we are going to get sucked down on top of them, meaning our wind. So just trying to give you like a heads up on the game plan. And so we made a stalk. We put our backpacks down and we start getting down. We probably got to 50 meters as the crow flies. There's bush and stuff and everything in the way of us. But then this kangaroo was on our side of the gully that we were trying to get down. And sure enough, the wind got sucked down into the kangaroo and it was up and off.
Cock blocker.
Yeah, and they knew. They just knew something was up. They stood up. They were actually bedded down by this time. They were just laying around having a look. They stood up and they were very aware and kind of watching, and then they just took off. And you're like, now what?
I'd said it again. What's next, buddy?
Yeah, you're like, so they've just gone up here. Does that mean we go around here? I'm like, nope, that's hunt over. They're too aware.
Another valuable lesson.
Yeah, and that was kind of like the depths of our hunt, I guess.
And
was there what were some of the thoughts you had about, because you said you had a lot of almost expectations or thinkings of how it would go versus how it did actually go?
Well, I think the biggest thing was the naive understanding of what I thought hunting entailed. It was like once we got there, I realized that I knew fuck all about stalking and winding and just so many things to learn, right? And like, even down to like the tack you carry, how you carry your bow, how your backpack fits on you, like what shoes you're wearing, where you look to stand. It's like when we were stalking, I'm like, why am I standing on every goddamn step? I'm looking down trying to be as quiet as possible. And it just becomes, it's difficult. The whole thing is difficult, but it's also, I love difficult things. So it was like,
and so rewarding.
Yeah,
when you get it
100%.
right.
Yeah. And like that, that stalk I got on day 2, like I'll never forget that. It was this fella looking me in the eyes. I'm like, he's looking at me like, you should have drawn back while you're kneeling down, buddy. So anyway.
Could have had me.
Exactly. So, but then when I stalked down an old man and got the good shot, it was just this, I don't know, it was the same emotional smack, but it was like a feeling of accomplishment, right? Because I'd made a really good, or in my mind, I'd made the shot that I should have done.
Yeah.
So, and then once we got him downhill and we processed him, it was a different emotional feeling. But for me, there's so many things that, like, for one, I'm going to go home and figure out how to get a pack to fit my shoulders properly, because Maddie probably heard me say, me traps are killing me. How many goddamn times I'm out there rubbing deep heat into my shoulders. And there's a creek there too, which is almost like a cold plunge. So I use that once or twice to help. And it's good in a way, because every time we do a big jump up, my calves were burning that hard. I couldn't feel my traps anymore.
Yeah. The pain would take over of one body part over the
like,
other.
I'm pretty fit, but it's just, that lactic burn, that's a lot to be said. It's funny because, shout out to Michael at the shop. I talked to him about my fitness regime and stuff, and he goes, mate, you don't know how hard it is. You don't know what it's going to be like till you get out there. It's grueling and it's uncomfortable and you're hot. And I'm like, oh, sounds fun.
It is. It's just a different type of fitness. It is hard to prepare for. I think,
yeah.
Well, you're probably right in saying the stair climber, like if you jumped on that would be a great prepper. That with a weighted pack.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the big thing too, is that, like, it made me realize how important the tack is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when I looked at your backpack, I was like, that's a serious backpack.
Yeah.
But then after I had that first day, I wasn't carrying much either. It was only one bloody billy, corded in my backpack, and I was pretty sore.
Yeah, and it would have been, 9 kilos, 10 kilos maybe?
Yeah, bugger all. But like, we'd gone up the top of the ridge and mucked around and come down and walked. We had done a bit of walking.
Yeah, we'd done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, but, I don't know, naively expected my body to cope a lot better, and it didn't.
Yeah.
But that's just how it is. And by the end of the trip, I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's probably the accomplishment as well, but yeah, I just want to say thanks very much for taking me out, man. Like, you don't understand how much fun that was for me, and it's like not very often that you get to meet people like yourself that bloody have the opportunity and the skill set to teach me so much, And like I said, I'm a carpenter by trade, but it's like, I'll take knowledge anywhere I can get it from, right? Especially those that know well. And it's like, it was just so interesting because the monkey see, monkey do thing, right? It's just, it's so interesting. Like, I learn viscerally as well. Like, I have to feel it, touch it, taste it to kind of understand it, So it's like, I just learned so bloody much. Like, I'll probably go home and, talk me Mrs. Ear off flat out about this, which she's well aware I'm good at. So, yeah, there's so many things I've learned about it. But the biggest thing I'm I'm going to look into, or, do is just practice, practice, practice. And the biggest thing I'll do is make sure that I'm comfortable at 30, because I know now that like the stalk is the hardest part of it.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Getting into the range that you're good at, and
I still also think, like give yourself, say like, okay, for the first year, you can't shoot above 20.
yeah.
Because the concept there, like, or maybe even like the first 10 hunts, because the concept there is that you start to get actually comfortable with the animal, because as you know, when you've got an animal in front of you, the adrenaline dumps, and it is such a different sensation to just practicing at home. And so it's like, yes, have your 30 set in as maybe a follow-up shot, but try to make your shots, and man, even try to get to 10 if you can from here on out. Like
100%. And that's like the biggest thing, man, like stalking down on that billy and him looking at me and stuff, like I'll fucking remember that forever.
Oh,
and it's
100%.
like, I honestly found the stalking more exciting than the kill shot.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what it was. Just this innate feeling of like, as you're stalking in, I don't know if it's a caveman brain or whatever, like it just bloody, I'm still like kind of getting my head around it, because I'm pretty exhausted too. Like this morning I was doing silly stuff. I was like, my brain's not working. I'm pretty tired.
The fatigue set in.
Yeah, fatigue had set in. But yeah, the biggest thing for me really is that, like, not letting ego get in the way, and making that under 20-meter shot and really focusing on the stalk. And like, I'm happy to say that, like, if I stalk 15 animals and I don't shoot one of them, I'm still having a bloody good time.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So that's the biggest thing I take away from it, is that, like, it's really respecting the animal, respecting yourself, and just making sure that you're ready to do the right thing, And I don't know. I'm just still, I'll probably go home and draw a picture about that billy staring at me. It'd be a lot bigger than it was in real life, but yeah, I'll remember that forever.
It was after taking Geordie out for his first hunt a few months ago, where I kind of realized like how transformative it is. And it's one weekend, and it really is like a rite of passage in a sense, like getting out to go and harvest your own meat and take it home and feed the family. And as a concept, like I saw how transformative it was just for Geordie that weekend, and again now for you this weekend.
Oh,
Grant,
100%.
Watching the transformation of the thought processes, and it literally is like a fire hose to the mouth, but it's the best fire hose to the mouth you've ever had, in a sense. Like you walked away just lighter, happier. It's just an interesting process to watch, and I think it is such a powerful thing, bow hunting. I think it's just amazing what it can offer.
Yeah, like I've always kind of seen myself as a bit of a renaissance man. I know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. And
yeah,
it made me realize that I know fuck all about when it comes to stalking and winding and all these things. And it's, like I'm going to go home now and do a lot of homework and research. And like I'd said to Maddie, it's like I could read every textbook about butchering, but you just got to have knife in hand and get it done.
Yeah.
And for me, that was the most innate feeling. When I was butchering the animal, although, wasn't perfect the way I did it. It just felt natural.
Yes.
Like it felt like something I'm meant to do. It was very fulfilling.
Can you imagine having to do it with a stone carved knife?
Yeah.
Had to knock clean by yourself.
Oh my God. And quickly learned that I can't sharpen a knife real well.
I mean, it doesn't help. I didn't bring my actual proper steel. So we're using they're still good. The field, workshop field, field sharpener.
Maddie got in and did it for me, but it's, it's like, I don't know. I'm such a proud dude. I'm like, I want to learn how to do this myself. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say I did it for you. It was more so like, hey, just try it. Like, do this part instead. Do this part instead. Or
no. I mean, sharpening the knife.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I tried once or twice. I'm like, I'm not doing it right.
I think that, and there's actually someone said that to me once about, whoever sharpened the knife should be the one that uses the steel, because they've got their angle that they use.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know how much I necessarily believe that, because it's just you're following an angle, but it does make some sense, I guess. Like you'd probably hold it more specifically a different way than what I do.
Well, the thing is, dude, I've sharpened my chisels 1,000 times.
True.
I know how to get an edge, but like, that's with the technique that I know.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the equivalent of like, I remember during the week when I was having all this bow drama, you're like, you can shoot my bow. I'm like, nope. Not a goddamn chance, man.
Yeah, I'm like, worst comes to worst, just use my bow. I'll take my longbow and use this.
But like at that point, I was so broken and just disheveled. I'm like, you know what? I'll just come as a shadow and watch. I was that willing to just.
I would not have had it. You would have been shooting my bow until you were comfortable, and then we would have been going out that way.
Yeah, I do appreciate that, man. It's just like, that's the cool thing about this community. Yeah, it's like so many people want to help. That's the biggest thing. Like once I went to the shop and stuff and told them my issue, and then I got a hunt booked, you could just see how much they wanted to help. So kudos to those lads.
Yeah, no. Michael does an incredible job. I mean, all the boys I've met at the shop are really cool. It is, it's interesting. I got the longbow out this weekend, and I was like, I'm going to shoot it if I'm shooting well, and I absolutely just shot like dog shit. like three arrows I missed completely on the target. I'm like, what is going on here?
It's a cool looking longbow though.
Yeah, it's awesome looking longbow. I think I need to go back to the drawing board of actually shooting with my broadheads because I never get to. And I was obviously gripping it and holding it a little bit differently because it was smacking my arm as well compared to it usually doesn't do that. So I got it down. I'm like, okay, this is it. We're going. And then I'm like, I'm just going to have a few like warm up shots and make sure we're good. And when I had like 2 good shots and 3 bad, I'm like, nope, not today.
Yeah, it was so interesting when you said like, and I took it really well. You're like, we got to the point where we're near those deer and you're like, this is where rifles shooting stops. This is where compound bow shooting starts.
Yep.
And then when we got within range, you're like, this is where compound shooting stops. This is where trad bow starts. I'm like, man, that's a patient man.
Yeah, exactly. It does. It takes a lot of patience. I mean, that block's good for it because you've got so much like long grass and trees and stuff where you can get in so close, like all those deadfall where you were so close. But still, it's like, even that 12-meter shot that you took, for me, I still need to get closer. I'm still like, hey, if I can get to 6, I'm happy.
Yeah, that just amazes me. Like, well, that's that's another level of hunting, which takes me back to like, caveman boys doing that with, like you said, obsidian ends and timber shafts they made themselves. And
yeah, exactly.
Man, that's just next level.
Yeah, I guess we're constantly distracted now with little time, right? So it's like pick your time and efforts into the things that you want to, and it's just I don't have time to make my own wood arrows. It might be down the track, but I need to get a few kills with my bow first, my longbow.
Yeah, and I realize, like, I've got a little trad bow I first bought, like everybody does, I suppose, and it's fun to shoot. But I had a big admiration when I went to the 3D and seen blokes shooting them efficiently. I'm just like, that's next level.
It really takes a lot of time and effort. Like I can pick up my wheels and be pretty good, even without shooting them for a few weeks, or even I've gone like a few months without shooting and shot really well still. Versus the trad bow, like it falls apart quickly on me. And I've been doing not a heap, but more shooting than I have been doing recently. Like in previous months, in the last month since I talked to Joel Turner on the podcast, and just getting used to his system and using it as much as possible. And I've really seen my groupings go closer. And so that's what makes me think that potentially it was something to do with the broadhead and the tuning of that as such. But I just need to play with it to get more confident with it, I think.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
Yeah, if you're going to go hunting, be half fit.
It definitely helps.
Yeah. It was I don't know, just such a big eye opener for me, man. I can't thank you enough. So yeah, it was a bloody great trip, and my missus will probably be sick of me talking about it by the end of the week.
Good. Maybe we should become Bowhunter.
Yeah, exactly. The sad thing is next time I go to a 3D, I'll be like, you got to come hunting, boys. So yeah. I can't thank you enough, man. It was awesome.
It's a different world too, though, right? The 3D to the hunting. I think 3D is cool in the sense of you've got a target that looks very lifelike, animal lifelike, and you just need to try shoot an animal. But then when you actually go out to shoot it, it becomes even more refined of where you can shoot.
Well, that's probably something I'd say is like, the 3D stuff and the home target shooting, they don't move, right? It's a 2D
different
image that does not move. So
you don't get the same adrenal dump.
Yeah. And it's just, that was the biggest thing. It's like just time in the saddle really was what you need, and yeah, I'm excited for the next one. And it's just kind of, I suppose, between now and then, just practice as much as I can and get proficient at those longer lengths for the follow-up shots, and just do some research on animal behavior, I think is a big thing. Because that was really fun to watch, like that big stork with the billy that jumped up on me, just watching his behavior.
Yeah.
Was really fun, like watching the girlie try and hide. It's funny. I was having a laugh.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, bro. Thanks for a great weekend.
Yeah, thanks very much, man.